Welcome back to the show. We're here with Jon Spurr, who is the owner of Inspired Life Mortgage here in Tucson. It is a local company. How long have you been in business?
I've been doing mortgage for 31 years. Inspired Life, we're in our 5th year of being on my own.
So we were talking about credit repair and this number of 30%, trying to keep the amount of credit that you are using to about 30% of what's available. And that some say 50, but being conservative, it's better to say possibly 30%. So if you're sitting where you've got accounts that you are using more than that 30% and you want to try to increase the amount of credit you have, I've heard that a good way to do that is to go in and try and increase your limits. What does that look like compared to going out and opening a brand new credit card or some new line of credit?
I would always suggest if you can get an increase from current creditors, get an increase from current creditors. Going and shopping for credit tends to be a negative at first towards your credit score, especially having a lot of what they call inquiries, somebody looking into your credit. It can indicate a sense of urgency in your life of where you need to borrow money. And so these logarithms factor that into, okay, what's going on in their life that they got to get this money? Why have they had so many inquiries done? Versus using the creditors that you already have and going to them and saying, hey, I'd like to apply for a credit line increase. And I've had this card for 2 years. I've never missed a payment. You guys haven't given me the increase. And a lot of times you can just go online and do it. I know that the 2 banks that I have credit cards with, you can log in, there's a little button you click on, apply for credit increase, and a lot of time the computer just gives it to you there on the spot.
Yeah.
So that's a good way if you're looking for a way to increase that capacity to improve your credit score. That is something that you can do. What I caution about is don't do this as a form to, oh, now I have more credit, I can go out and use it.
Right, right.
So if you have your cards currently maxed out and you know that you're going to keep them maxed out, don't do it. Don't get more in debt.
Advice.
What about closing accounts? You know, sometimes people think that if I have too many accounts that are open, that's going to count against me, and so they go and close a bunch of accounts. How does that affect you?
It definitely could have a negative impact. I've seen it had a negative impact, especially when you're closing out a revolving account, like a credit card, that has a 0 balance, and you still have balances on other credit cards, because now that aggregate that we were talking about, the aggregate balance has gone down, but what you owe stayed the same. So, we changed the numerator instead of the denominator, so that percentage goes up significantly faster. So there's no harm in having these accounts open. It's if you use them and don't pay them that creates the harm. So I have a bunch of credit cards I don't use. I don't close them out. If they send me a little notice that they're going to cancel them if I don't use it, I'll go put a tank of gas on it and I'll pay it off just so I keep it. But there's not, I don't ever have a good reason to say go close a revolving account unless you just are that person that doesn't have the control to not use them. Mm-hmm. There's no reason to close them in my mind.
What about the differences between secured and unsecured debt on your credit?
A secured debt is when you take out immediately secured debt, and let's go backwards. Secured debt is going to be an auto loan, an RV loan, a motorcycle, a boat. You physically purchased an asset that they put a lien against is going to be secured debt. I don't throw a house in there because that's its own category and that's real estate. But we're talking most times secured debt is going to be some sort of vehicle or RV or something along those lines. The initial reaction to credit score as soon as you go out and buy a new vehicle is it dips a little. After you've paid a couple payments on it and they see, oh, they can handle this new debt, they're making the payments, it comes right back up, maybe even gets a little better. Secured debt is definitely looked at differently because the risk isn't as great if you stop paying. Because if you stop paying on your car, a tow truck comes up in the middle of the night and drives away with your car, and then the bank goes and sells it for the balance, right? It's called repossession. Now that repossession is definitely going to damage your credit. But the risk level isn't as high as to somebody that goes and puts $10,000 on a credit card, that $10,000 isn't secured against anything. It's secured against the fact that most people are good and they're just going to pay that bill, right?
What it sounds like is that with the secured debt, they can possibly get their money back. With an unsecured debt, you give $10,000, they're not going to get their $10,000 back if you don't pay it.
Oh, they can. It's just a very long process through the courts and garnishing wages. And I mean, there's a whole process for these banks to go try to get their money back on unsecured debt. It's just expensive and a long process for them.
So
Go ahead.
I was going to ask if someone has maybe, they let the utility bills go beyond their due date. Is that going to impact their credit?
So there's this thing that's been going around the internet of these people that say, oh, here's a great way to improve your credit, self-report utilities, which is amazing until you self-report utilities that you've been paying late. Utilities are not part of your credit report. They're not required to be part of your credit report. Now, you can do what's called self-reporting, and every month when you get your utility bill, you scan it and you send it into the 3 credit bureaus, and then they put it on your credit. And yes, that is a form of helping build credit until, as you said, you make a late payment on your utility bill. If you have late payments on your utility bills and you're not sending it to the credit bureau, the credit bureaus are not going to know, and it's not going to affect your credit score unless you allow it to go to a point where it gets shut off and it goes to a collections agency, and then the collection agency is reporting it.
What about HOAs? Are they doing any reporting if you end up with, huge fines because you haven't, I don't know, brought your trash can in or pulled your weeds for a while?
Weeds, painted your eaves, your dog's barking too much. General rule is if you owe somebody money, if it's an HOA, if it's a utility, if it's your cell phone bill, auto insurance, whatever monthly bills you have that you're paying, if you don't pay it, at some point it's going to turn into a collection, a charge-off, or a judgment. And once it reaches that stage, in some form or fashion, is going to show up on your credit report and have a negative impact. HOAs do not report unless you're not paying. And they have to send you to collections before it's typically going to show up on your credit report.
And I'm going to say those memberships, whether it's, to a gym or something that you wanted to cancel, and they have cancellation policies that are not easy to work with. If you stop paying, they'll send you to collections as well.
I talked to a gentleman 2 days ago. He has a great long story. The one thing that's keeping us from being able to do anything for him right now is he owns his own business, and he provides cell phones for all his employees, and they changed their plan from XYZ carrier to ABC. They owed on every single cell phone with XYZ carrier. We pull his credit report, and there is a $3,000 collection account from that carrier because that's what he owed on the cell phones. 2 months ago, before he changed cell phone companies, he bought a truck, and his credit score was 780. His credit score is now 560.
Wow.
So, and this is just how it works. If you borrow the money or you sign a contract, you owe it, and then there's things in place that allow them to place those collections if you don't pay it.
And I'm gonna guess that the dollar amount is not as important as the time factor.
Yes, it's fresh, so it has a huge ding on your credit score.
We'd like to thank everybody for staying with us. We are here to discuss more interesting topics about credit repairs with Jon Spurr, who is the owner of Inspired Life Mortgage. We'll talk to you after the break.